So you just graduated university or college with your diploma and degree and want to start work in another country, like Canada or the US? In an increasingly globalized world, it is surprising to see that post-secondary degrees do not translate across national borders. Graduating from a university in a given country does not guarantee a job in that field when traveling abroad. So why aren't post-secondary degrees equally recognized in different countries around the world? Before talking about the theory, let's first examine a brief history of higher education. Sir Ken Robinson suggested that modern schools were created on two fundamental pillars: the economic context of the Industrial Revolution and the intellectual context of the Enlightenment. However, each country has a specific cultural context, and the education system is indexed on those differences. In the US, the first post-secondary schools, like Harvard College in Boston, were created to provide an education similar to Oxford and Cambridge University. But in America, schools focused on training young people to become Protestant ministers. Students who attended Harvard were encouraged to pursue a liberal arts curriculum as their first degree and a Master of Arts as their second degree, by reading and learning about the Protestant religion for 3 years. This was encouraged because the arts were considered vital to the culture of becoming an educated gentleman. Similarly, higher education institutions in Switzerland were created in the early 1800s by the Swiss-German Protestantism in opposition to religious Catholicism. However, the focus was on science and technology rather than law, like other countries in Europe. The competing interests of the main language groups led to unequal growth in educational attainment across regions. On the other hand, Canada was founded by both French and English settlers, and also had competing debates from both parties. The school system was created to include both Catholic and Protestant schools, but with the imperial power of Britain reigning over Canada in terms of both cultural and economic values, most educational institutions were established around Protestant values. The small differences that appeared during the creation of these higher education institutions around the world now take on huge proportions on a global scale. With the increasing population of students, the growing number of universities in each country, and the systemic differences in educational practices, it is no surprise that credentials are not recognized globally.
Human capital theory sees people as capital. In that sense, getting a higher education degree is considered an investment, because that financial capital invested into university will later become greater rewards in terms of professional opportunities and wages. However, in a capitalist system, this also means that if you don't invest money, it's not valuable education. This ideology spawns virtual hierarchies between countries around the world in terms of how much money is invested in higher education. This relates to how the degrees are recognized internationally. There is also a very North America-centric ideology which devalues the worth of educational attainment outside of their system and further reinforces the virtual gap between the Western world and other countries. Furthermore, culturally, not all professions are valued the same way in each country, which leads to a dissonance between the value of a degree in a given country and its recognition globally. Structural functionalist theory states that every individual in a society has a specific role, as do social institutions. In that context, entities that work to the benefit of society as a whole have a very important position and should thus be protected. Furthermore, the more an individual is integrated into a social and cultural network, the more useful they become, because they acquire the adequate social capital, the proper resources to navigate their social system. The underlying assumption is that the system works as a whole, only with all of its parts, but isn't compatible with other systems. Social capital is reflected in the degrees earned in a given country, and those degrees will then have less value to a foreign system, because social capital varies across nations. Conflict theory is the idea that power relations structure every social interaction. In an economic system that functions around capitalism, like the USA, this means that the divide between the lower and upper class is extremely wide, and that translates into the type of education one gets. With the principle that more expensive schools means a better education. In a socialist context, similar to Canada, most schools are on the same level in terms of reputation as well as tuition fees, which means that everyone gets an equally recognized education for the same price. In the social capitalist countries like Switzerland, education is mostly very affordable, except for private post-secondary institutions, which charge terrifyingly high tuition. In light of those specific national differences, degrees from each country do not translate globally because the system in which they are embedded are not compatible.
The implications of this inability to cooperate on an international level is that degrees are not recognized across borders. Because of this, each country has come up with their own way of managing accreditation. For example, the accreditation body of the US is privately run and oversees the entire country, whereas in Canada, the provincial government is responsible for their own accreditation. The lack of international cooperation further segregates the world and limits cultural exchange, international learning, and diversification. Recent revolutionary international accords are being created to make credentials recognizable globally, but only in specific fields or certain areas of the world. These accords are limited. They are not compatible with education systems across the world and are not implemented on a large enough scale to make a powerful impact globally. As we move towards a rapidly developing technological age, online learning has become a new cornerstone for educational development. Although some of the essential parts of traditional education are missing, like one-on-one interactions and real-life collaboration, these educational tools are already disappearing in our increasingly standardized system. What is most important is these technologies allow us to pursue degrees and attend classes outside of the range of what would be traditionally possible. Coursera, for example, is an international platform which recognizes proportionately the contributions of each institution that is joining and offering classes online. These new education systems are fairly young, but show tremendous potential and could usher in a new era for education. But will these new education systems be able to merge with our traditional education systems? Is higher education bound to traditional values, or will it move entirely to virtual classrooms? Will this finally be the solution to credential recognition around the world?